Mullet Madjack is a first-person shooter that adds just the perfect amount of roguelike elements to keep this high-octane thriller that calls back to the days of the arcade cabinet. Hello, my name is The Dove and I love indie games, and this one is an absolute indie-developed gem from Hammer 95 that just crossed over to the Xbox Series consoles. So let's get into it. Now, to be completely honest with everyone watching, I'm not the biggest anime fan here, and while I do play the occasional first-person shooter, it either needs to have a great story or it has to have an insanely fun multiplayer element for me to really enjoy it. Nothing against fans of either, there's just only so much time in a day and so many games I can personally play. The only reason I'm really pointing that out is because I absolutely loved Mullet Madjack. I don't know if it was the fantastic atmosphere with the art, music, sound effects, and retro graphics. I don't know if it's because it's a fast-paced first-person shooter that got my heart pumping right away, or if it's because it looks retro but handles like a modern game. Regardless of the exact reason why, I found myself returning to this gem time after time. This is Hammer 95's first game. The studio consists of 3 game developers who, quoting their press release, love the aesthetics of old anime and aim to bring back that nostalgia. And they succeeded in this reviewer's opinion. I felt multiple times like I was playing a game in the arcades of the old days. You play as Mullet Madjack, a 2090s cop who has been summoned to rescue some young lady who was taken hostage. So for the normal game mode, Mullet Madjack must weave his way through 10 stages of 10 floors each, including a boss battle on the 10th floor. You'll have to blast your way past robo-billionaires, which are either robot billionaires or cyborg billionaires. I don't know, they're the bad guys that you're shooting. The plot gets a little muddy here. I think it's just trying to justify the violence, basically, but we're playing video games here, so let's have some fun. The atmosphere is what you want out of this kind of retro-style first-person shooter. It's also an atmosphere that's different. Definitely something you probably haven't seen too often. It doesn't have a full cyberpunk vibe, more of a retro-futurism. If you've played the Fallout series, you're familiar with that retro-futuristic timeline or setting. In Fallout, they're focused on a post-World War era look with futuristic technology. In Mullet Madjack, the world is a mix of late 80s and early 90s culture. It's basically futuristic cyborg and robot technology and a dash of some amazing Miami Vice-style mullet mayhem. As mentioned, the game's broken down into 10 stages, generally each with 10 floors that you'll have to clear in order to complete those stages. Now, one of the twists of the game is that there is constantly a timer winding down, so at the beginning of each level, you'll only have 10 seconds. Now, you can add seconds to your timer for each kill, and the types of kill will actually give bonuses to that timer, but you will have a maximum of 10 seconds unless you get some upgrade later on. So no stockpiling with your attacks. Along with being able to add seconds to your timer, it can be reduced with damage taken by enemies or the environmental effects. You can also increase your health with some vending machines or soda cans lying around, so all in all, you'll have to pay attention to the time and strategize your attacks. I know there's a lot of people who don't like timers in their game, but the timer in Mullet Madjack adds to the difficulty and forces you to flow with the game. For the first couple levels, I honestly barely even noticed it until, I failed. And don't think you can go ahead and memorize levels or anything like that, because each level randomly unfolds, and each stage you clear, the obstacles they introduce get harder and harder. So every time you repeat or retry a level, it's going to be completely different than the last time. Which again, I feel like it just forces you to try to work with the natural momentum of the game. Between each level, you'll have the choice to pick between 3 upgrades, and to be honest, for all the roguelikes I've been playing, this system between rounds keeps things simple while still having quality impact on your gameplay. Look, there are plenty of roguelikes out there that make you feel like an absolute superhero god at some certain point in the game, and there are others that make you really strategize and think of ways to complement your playstyle against the increasingly difficult enemies and levels. Mullet Madjack is definitely one that makes you strategize. And depending on your difficulty, this won't be a true roguelike, as it sends you to the beginning of a level if you die. So unless you're on one of the harder difficulties which has permadeath and makes you start from the very first floor of the game after death, you'll have a bit of a checkpoint system here to lean on. Now that 10-second timer doesn't even sound like that much because it isn't. Sure, the first few rounds you can fire blindly with some success, but once you get further in the game, you'll need to harness that momentum to have any kind of success. A lot of times, it's going to be a heart-pounding race to the exit. And with simple but effective controls, it makes this all the more fun to play. Mullet Madjack keeps the game simple with just a few basics: jump, kick, and shoot. With all this stuff that's going on the screen, all the enemies flying by, coming at you, puddles of acid or lava popping out of nowhere, well, you're not going to want to think about all the different movesets that you can apply. This game keeps it minimalistic for the right reasons, and it works perfectly. And those controls help stick the immersion, which will sink in pretty quick. The callback to the 90s aesthetics and music make this one feel like the perfect kind of retro game. It also has a bit of a Duke Nukem feel with the sarcasm, self-awareness of being a video game, and of course, his love of one-liners.
I'm here to kick scrap and make lollipops. It's mullet time.
Boomer shooter, or whatever you want to call it, if you're looking for a retro-style FPS with modern controls, Mullet Madjack might be what you need. The sounds pop, the menu music is perfect for the style they're trying for, and although I'm not a big anime fan, the utilization of that art style here works well. And it just all screams a retro arcade style game. The one where you just keep pumping quarters in as the game gets harder and harder. And while the social media host in the game can get a little bit annoying at times, you can easily mute them and focus on the awesome retro sound effects.
Success comes before work is in the dictionary.
This is an FPS that I would recommend to the gamut of gamers, from FPS lovers to those who just simply dip their toe in the waters occasionally. This is a lot of fun and a lot more creative than the standard games in the genre. Mullet Madjack screams high energy, and it absolutely nails the old feel you got from playing those old cabinet arcade games. The feeling where if you die, this is actually over because you don't have any more quarters. But in this version, you just get to start over at the start of the level. Still, the thrill is there, and I love how Mullet Madjack infused all those retro feelings with some dynamite controls. My biggest criticism about the game would be that there's a little too much eye candy going on with all the bonuses and seconds being added. Sometimes it's hard to actually see what's going on or what you're trying to aim at. You can adjust your crosshairs to kind of minimize that, but that's the most you can do at this time because there's no options to take those numbers off. Now, I've seen some critiques of the game that say levels, although random, can start to get a bit repetitive. While you might have a bit of that if you get stuck at any certain point, the further you get in the game, the more obstacles and challenges that'll come your way and start to make those more basic parts become quite the gauntlet. Now, depending on your skill level, this one could be a quicker game. I honestly think a grand majority of gamers will be able to finish this one in a handful of gaming sessions. But if all you do is play first-person shooters, you could finish this one quicker than maybe you'd like. For those gamers, I still think you could get your money's worth out of Mullet Madjack by starting on one of the harder difficulties. There's enough incline in difficulty to keep players on their toes regardless of skill level. If you're breezing through things, just try the game as a true roguelike experience and jack it up to the hardest difficulty. This one could be enjoyable from any number of first-person shooter fans to those who just miss the days of the fast-paced thrill from those classic arcade cabinets. The retro vibe is strong with Mullet Madjack, and it just plays so damn smoothly. I can't help but recommend this absolute indie retro gem. Currently available on PC and Xbox Series consoles. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider clicking the subscribe button now. We have more videos like this and have a weekly gamer news podcast called The Gamer Buff, with all the latest gaming news. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, this is The Dub.